keep waving. Okay. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Does it look familiar? Oh, it sure does.
We tried this keeper
I don't remember that we had this right here on the 54, but I'm sure we did. That's one thing we didn't have in early airplanes, where a lot of our trim was on the wheel.
Are you with
Oh, yeah.
You know, where
you walking around with
you could trim it on the wheel. These we had to trim this way. That made them a little bit harder to land.
So that was your
part of the restoration?
ball that you were talking about earlier that you had to guide in.
Well, it's, the needle ball is right in here.
Nice to meet you.
Okay.
was up here.
Yeah, it should be right down here.
That's why I was interested.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't do any good up
Yeah,
here. You'd have to
just
fly
not
it
quite
right
nimble
here.
enough to get
Oh,
it all the way around in there, but
Can't get in there.
I know, but he did good.
He did so, yeah.
Here it is. Here's the needle ball right here.
Okay.
But that in the airplane, it would have been right in here.
Gotcha.
Right about here.
Very cool stuff, Norm.
Yeah.
Proud to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. Back a lot of memories. And this was the #1 airplane in World War II of the transports. Took us through a lot of stuff.
Come on, Mike.
Well, that's it. I'm gonna get out.
Does someone have a question they'd like to start off with?
On and 12 hours off. That'd be 3 trips into Berlin. Yeah. Okay. I was at Fossberg in Germany, which was in the British zone most of the time, and flew into Gatow. Some of the few times I flew out of Rhine, Main, and Tempelhof also. No, no. When the weather was sunny, the Russians would tow targets in front of us and shoot through us. And then when we would be landing, particularly at night, they shined the big searchlights at us so we couldn't land, trying to blind us about landing. So we always asked for kind of bad weather. No, that was Lieutenant Halverson.
The question was, did you throw any candy out? And he said, no, that was Lieutenant Halverson. A question I have is, you alluded to the Soviet fighters. Did they buzz you guys when you were flying in?
They didn't get too close to us because, well, I don't know the real reason, but as long as we were in the air corridor, they were told to stay away from us, but except for shooting those targets to us. So we didn't have much of a problem with the fighters. And also, the Russians did not fly at night and they did not fly in weather. That's why we kind of liked the overcast, because we had the air to ourselves.
How many crew members did you have when you were flying on the airlift?
There were 3 of us, just 3, pilot, co-pilot, and flight engineer.
Do you remember how many total flights you made on the 54 in the Berlin airlift?
160.
sir, I'd like to thank you again for coming out and joining us here. Oh, no, one more question. How old were you when you're flying your missions?
I was 25. I started flying in '54 when I was 21.
What sort of approaches, if any, do you have available from the weatherman's man that was often the case? What were the runways like?
What sort of approach did you have? Eight. Okay. What kind of instrument flying training did you have going into the Berlin airlift?
Well, we were all qualified instrument pilots. What was called GCA approach, they could take us in on the course and also on the altitude. We call it the ground control approach. They worked with us all the time in good weather and also in when it was bad weather, because this way they could stagger the airplanes to make sure that we weren't running into each other.
What kind of cargo did you haul?
We carried, sometimes the airplane was full of potatoes, which everything was 100-pound bags, or flour in 100-pound bags, coal in 100-pound bags. Milk always came in regular cartons and regular glass on kind of corrugated metal deals. So that was the only one that was, the other was just, like I say, heavy. Yeah. But and we carried, just like Brian said, I remembered that we built it up to 7,000 tons a day. And you had I think.
Did you have any close calls?
I had a couple of close calls. It goes into a little bit of history, but I remember one time I took off on an airplane that had been on the ground for about three days, getting an engine change. This was in the middle of winter, and it was a fully overcast night. And as I took off, I realized that I had lost my artificial horizon and my directional indicator, and all I had was needle ball and airspeed. And the needle ball is what you had to fly the airplane. If the ball was right in the center, your wings were level, and the needle was straight up and down, you weren't turning. And then to turn the airplane or to make the turns, the ball would move or a little bit to the right. It was kind of a rotator area there, and then the needle would move. And as soon as I got off the ground, I realized what had happened, and the ground control approach had me swing way out. Of course, I was off of the quarter out in the Russian zone, but it was nighttime and weather, and they don't fly, as I just said. So they brought me around in a great big quarter circle back to the runway, and the best sight that I ever saw in my life was the runway lights when I was coming into land, because I sure wasn't sure that we were going to make it in.
Did a lot of crews not make it?
We lost 52 pilots and flight engineers and 17 airplanes on the Berlin airlift.
How many were mid-air and how many were on landing?
Well, we don't know. They never told us anything. Even one time I was coming in and broke out of the overcast right over pretty close to the runway, and there was a C-54 right in front of me that had crashed and was burning, and I flew right over it. And nothing was ever said about anyone that had any problem, because we had so many problems with everything else. So they didn't get into it. Another time that I did have a problem was one time I lost an engine going into Berlin, and there was no maintenance in Berlin, so they would stack us right in with the empties coming back, and I was getting another engine that was starting to cut out, and it was we were burning a lot of oil, and what we did was pump a lot of alcohol in to keep the engine running. And then some wise guy said, "What are you trying to do? Get another air medal?" I didn't answer him. I was happy to be able to get it back and land it at Fossburg.
She asked, what does shooting the targets through them mean? Referring to, I believe, the Soviet fighters?
Well, what they would do is they would take like an airplane would be towing a target and across our way, and then the fighters would come through and shoot in across it, just across our front and into the target. That's what it was.
Kind of a sneaky way to do it.
That's the only time they did it was when the weather was clear.
What was the typical duration or distance from each sortie?
For each sortie, what was your typical distance or duration?
You mean to be on the airlift?
I think for each sortie. How far were you flying on each sortie, and how long did it take?
From Fossburg to Berlin, that was an hour. Now, if it was from Rhine-Main end, that was an hour and a half. And from Celle, it was an hour and 15 minutes. But we had a corridor that we flew all the time. So, but it was 1 hour on the one that I flew most of the time.
Were you asking, did anybody ever parachute out, and did you guys wear did you have to wear a parachute in flight?
Parachutes on it. We didn't carry parachutes on the airplane.
Okay, I have a quick question. After the Berlin airlift, and when you were ending your career in the Air Force, what did you move on to then?
I became a test pilot at Douglas Aircraft in Long Beach, California. The C-124, and then for 3.5 years I was marketing manager on the B-66, RB-66 program in Tucson. And then the last 4 years I was on the DC-8 program, starting with its development at Edwards Air Force Base and the certification of the airplane. And then I trained 8 airlines on the DC-8.
And you told me about a couple of other aircraft after the 54 that you also got training on.
Well, I flew the B-17 and the B-24. Is that what you mean on those? In my career, I flew 86 different types of airplanes.
What was your favorite airplane you flew?
Well, this was number one in the Air Force. And the DC-8 was the first of the 4-engine jets for Douglas, and it was outstanding. It was really great. Yeah.
Yes.
Were you married when you were working in the Berlin airlift? If so, where did spouses live?
I believe the question is, were you married when you were flying the airlift, and where did your spouse live?
Then married later. I met my wife in Tokyo when I was transferred there in later years. She was the secretary to my commanding general, and she had spent 7 years in the Pentagon, and she wanted to travel, and I met her, and when we got back in I think it was 1950, I can't think of the damn number. We got married when we got back to the States. Oh, okay, yeah, oh, that's my son, yeah.
Norm, did you ever go supersonic?
Supersonic, one time in the DC-8, we were doing a special at Edwards Air Force Base on the airplane. We were checking the jack screw to see if it would work on the supersonic airplane. So I was the co-pilot, the chief engineering test pilot. We took it up to 48,000 feet. And by the way, at 48,000 feet, you can see the curvature of the Earth. And we dove it down, straight down with two F-100s on the wings, went through Mach 1, it didn't work. And we had to do work to get it unfolded, but we know exactly what you do. Even coming down, what you do to trim it out, you would have to put the wheel forward like you're going to go down some more and then trim back. And then the gravity worked out, and we came out at 14,000 feet. And that was a bonus flight.
Do you remember how many hours you have in just the C-54?
Well, just a little over 6,000 in this type, in this airplane. I flew it for 8 years.
Another one? We do not have the flight log for this aircraft, no.
What was the question?
You want to know if we had the flight log for this aircraft?
No, I asked the fellow that was, he said, no, they don't have it.
All right, please thank me. Thank.
Yeah, Area 51 is a military testing base.
Look at these nasty little pictures from the birds.
These are all before pictures.
Pretty small. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You got your camera going.
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you see it before? Yeah. Okay, they probably are. So this airplane that started flying when it was 22. You can imagine it just became a second nature. Yeah. And all this stuff that looks so complex was just normal stuff.
That's so awesome.
So they're gonna lift him up
Oh really?
and get him in the plane.